The golden rays of the evening sun fell softly on the red earth of Yumyuk village, a quiet and peaceful community surrounded by tall palm trees, narrow dusty roads, and the laughter of children chasing one another with broomsticks and old tires. It was one of those evenings when the world seemed to move slowly, when the air smelled of roasted corn, when old women sat on low stools peeling cassava, and when young lovers met under mango trees to whisper promises of forever. Among such lovers were Chica and Amarachi, two hearts bound by a love that made the villagers smile whenever they passed. Chica, a hard-working young man of 28, was known in the village as Yumyuk, the one who makes things happen. He was tall, strong, and always wore a calm smile that could melt even the angriest heart. Amarachi, on the other hand, was the pride of Yumyuk, fair-skinned, soft-spoken, with dimples that deepened whenever she laughed. Her laughter, light and musical, had made many young men lose sleep, but her heart belonged entirely to Chica. Their love story began years back at the village stream, Miri Udo, where women fetched water every morning. Chica had gone there one early morning to help his mother, whose knees had become too weak for the steep, slippery slope. As he lifted the water pot onto his shoulder, a young girl beside him slipped, and before the pot could shatter against the stones, he caught it midair. Their eyes met, and in that moment, something powerful connected them, something both mysterious and undeniable. From that day, they became inseparable. Their relationship blossomed like the hibiscus flowers that lined the village square. They went everywhere together, church, market, and festivals. The villagers had already nicknamed them Ndi Nwani na Dieki, meaning husband and wife of tomorrow. Even elders would say, "This one is true love. If it doesn't end in marriage, then the world has changed." And truly, their wedding plans were already underway. Both families had met, wine had been shared, and the date had been fixed for 3 weeks ahead. It was going to be the biggest wedding Yumyuk had seen in years. The women were already gossiping about the color of Amarachi's lace, and the men were preparing palm wine for the occasion. Everything was perfect, until one morning, when Chica received a message that changed everything. He had been called to the city, Enugu, for an urgent business deal. He had been supplying construction materials to a company there, and they wanted him to come immediately for a major payment and a new contract. To him, it was good news. To Amarachi, it was a storm that shook her heart. "Chica, Biko, don't go," she said, her voice trembling as they sat under their favorite mango tree that evening. "This journey doesn't feel right in my spirit. My heart is heavy about it." Chica laughed softly, cupping her face in his hands. Stop worrying. Nothing will happen. I'll just go for a few days and come back. I want to finish this deal before our wedding. I want our home to be beautiful. I want to give you the life you deserve." Tears filled her eyes. "Then take me with you." He smiled. "You know it's business, my love. I can't go with you this time. But I promise, I'll be back before the week ends." He kissed her forehead, his hand lingering on her cheek, as though he could feel the unease in her spirit. She clung to him like someone holding onto the last piece of peace she knew. Deep down, something in her whispered that this journey would change everything. The following morning, the whole village saw Chica leave. He waved at people, his bag slung over his shoulder, his smile bright. Amarachi stood by the roadside, watching until the bus disappeared beyond the palm trees, her heart pounding fast with an unexplainable fear. 3 days later, it happened. That evening, while Amarachi and her mother were grinding pepper in the backyard, her phone rang. It was one of Chica's business partners from Enugu. "Hello, Amarachi. Chica has been in an accident." The pestle fell from her hand and hit the ground with a dull thud. "What did you say?" "He was involved in a car accident on his way back. He's in the hospital now." Her mother dropped everything. "Yezu Emiya, Chica kwa?" The wedding boy. They rushed inside, her hands shaking, her voice trembling as she called Chica's brother for more details. By midnight, Amarachi was already in Enugu with Chica's family. The hospital smell made her dizzy, but nothing could have prepared her for what she saw when she entered the ward. There, lying weakly on the bed, bandaged around the head and eyes, was her Chica, the man she loved. The machines beside him beeped softly, and his hands twitched slightly when she touched him. "Chica, it's me, Amarachi," she whispered, her tears soaking his blanket. He turned his face toward her voice. "Amara, I can't see you. Everything is dark. Where are you? Her heart broke. She pressed her forehead against his hand. I'm here. I'll always be here. You'll be fine. But days turned to weeks, and the doctors confirmed the worst. Chica would never see again. The news hit the village like a thunderclap. The man who was once the pride of Yumyuk, who was supposed to walk proudly into marriage in a few days, was now blind. Amarachi refused to leave his side. She fed him, cleaned him, took him for walks around the compound, and spoke softly to him at night, describing everything around him so that he could see through her words. Yet the tongues in the village began to wag. People whispered when she passed. She's still with that blind man. That's not Lifo. A fine girl like her? Let her open her eyes. At first, she ignored them. But words are like water. They find their way into the smallest cracks. Soon, doubt began to creep into her mind. What if they were right? What if she was wasting her youth? Then came her so-called friends, led by her best friend, Oluchi. Amara, you've tried. But think well. You're too beautiful to suffer like this. A blind husband? You'll be the one doing everything. You deserve more. Those words began to eat deep into her heart. And slowly, she began to change. She stopped visiting every day, then once a week, and finally, she disappeared completely. The only message Chica got from her was through Oluchi, the same best friend, who came one afternoon to his house to tell him Amarachi wasn't coming again. But Oluchi couldn't say it. She saw Chica sitting quietly, his face lifted to the sound of her footsteps, a weak smile forming. Oluchi, you came? Please sit. Did Amarachi send you? Tell her I still love her. Her throat tightened. She couldn't bring herself to deliver such cruel news. Instead, she smiled sadly. She just asked me to check on you. From that day, Oluchi began to visit more often. At first, she came out of pity, but gradually, she found peace in his company. She was surprised at how much strength Chica had despite his blindness. He was gentle, funny, and grateful for even the smallest help. She started describing the world to him too, what the sky looked like each morning, what the children were playing, and how the trees bent when the wind blew. Slowly, friendship blossomed. And for the first time since the accident, Chica began to laugh again. The harmattan wind swept through Yumyuk with its dry breath, leaving the air thick with dust and the smell of burning firewood. The season of chill mornings and cracked lips had come again, and so had the season of gossip, when women gathered under the Udala tree to share stories that traveled faster than light. But this time, the talk of the town wasn't about the harmattan, nor the new masquerade festival. It was about Amarachi, the woman who abandoned her blind fiance. It had been 3 months since the accident. 3 months since the once bright wedding bells went silent. The white gown Amarachi had bought now hung in her mother's box, untouched and forgotten. Her heart, once warm with love and faithfulness, was now a battlefield of confusion and regret. At first, she tried to visit Chica even after the whispers began, but every visit left her emotionally drained. Seeing him stumble as he reached for things, hearing him call her name in darkness, it broke something inside her. She felt suffocated, as though the man she loved had been buried alive inside a prison of blindness, and she was locked inside with him. Her friends didn't help matters. Amara, I'm saying this because I love you. Oluchi had once told her during one of their evening talks before she started caring for Chica. That man is gone. You can't tie your future to a blind man. You'll suffer. Amarachi remembered those words too well. They replayed in her mind at night, when she lay on her bed staring at the ceiling. Slowly, her faith began to weaken. The same heart that had once said, I'll stay with you no matter what, now began to whisper, maybe it's time to move on. So one quiet Sunday afternoon, she told her mother, Mama, I'm tired. I can't continue like this. Her mother sighed. My daughter, the world is full of strange things. You have tried. But remember, God sees all hearts. Just be careful with whatever decision you take. Amarachi nodded, but her heart was already made up. She didn't return to Chica's house after that day. When the guilt became too heavy, she asked Oluchi to go and explain to him, an errand that changed the course of all their lives. Oluchi, on the other hand, never imagined she would be the one sitting beside Chica every day. When Amarachi sent her to deliver the message, she had gone with a heavy heart, but one look at Chica's face had broken her resolve. He looked thinner, paler, but there was still that calmness in his smile, the same smile that once drew Amarachi to him. Instead of breaking his heart, she found herself saying, "She just asked me to check on you." And that was the beginning of everything. Oluchi started visiting regularly, each time bringing food or fruits. Sometimes she read to him from old storybooks. Other times, they just talked for hours about life, about the sounds he could hear but not see. "Oluchi," he said one evening as the crickets began to sing outside. "Tell me, what does the sky look like tonight?" She smiled sadly. "It's beautiful, red and gold, like palm wine when the sun shines through it." He laughed softly. "You describe it well. You make me see things I can't see anymore." Her heart fluttered at those words, but she quickly brushed it aside. She was only helping a friend, nothing more. Yet each day she spent with him made her realize how kind, how deep, and how gentle Chica truly was. He would listen when she spoke, thank her for every little thing, and sometimes sing softly to himself when he thought she wasn't listening. Little by little, her pity turned into admiration, and admiration grew into something deeper, something she couldn't name. But she fought it. He was her best friend's man. Even if Amarachi had abandoned him, Oluchi didn't want to be seen as the kind of woman who picked up another's leftovers. Yet fate has a way of twisting hearts and situations in ways no one can predict. Meanwhile, Amarachi had found new company in the city. Her cousin had introduced her to Ibuka, a handsome young man from Nsukka who had recently returned from South Africa. He was the kind of man every girl noticed, dark, tall, and with that air of confidence that came from wealth. He drove a shining silver Lexus and wore designer shirts that made people stare when he passed. When he met Amarachi at a friend's birthday party, he smiled and said, "You're too beautiful to be sitting alone." That single sentence opened a door she didn't realize was still fragile. The compliments, the attention, the laughter, it all filled the emptiness she had been trying to hide since Chica's accident. Ibuka made her feel seen again. He took her out, bought her gifts, and whispered promises of marriage. Within weeks, Amarachi was completely lost in his world. Whenever her conscience tried to remind her of Chica, she brushed it away with one excuse: "He'll be fine. He deserves someone better than me." She started believing that maybe God was giving her a second chance at love. Someone who wasn't blind, someone who could show her the good life she had once dreamed of. But Ibuka was a smooth talker, a man with charm and no depth. He knew how to use sweet words to melt hearts, but he had no intentions beyond pleasure. While Amarachi was already imagining their wedding, Ibuka was already planning his escape. Back in Yumyuk, Chica's life began to change, thanks to Oluchi. She taught him how to walk confidently without stumbling, how to recognize sounds around him, and how to navigate his own house. She became his eyes, his comfort, and his laughter. One afternoon, Chica sat under the mango tree outside his compound, his walking stick beside him, and said to her, "Oluchi, I used to think my life ended the day I lost my sight. But now, I see more clearly than ever." She smiled. "How can you see when your eyes don't work?" "Because I see with my heart now," he said softly. "And the heart never lies." She stared at him, her throat tightening. That day, when she went home, she couldn't sleep. His words kept replaying in her mind. What was happening to her? Was she falling in love with him? She knelt by her bed that night and prayed, "God, if this is wrong, take it away. But if it's meant to be, show me a sign." And perhaps God did show her a sign. A week later, Chica's younger brother arrived from the city with news. "Brother, I met a specialist abroad who says your eyes can still be operated on. There's hope." Chica laughed bitterly. "Hope? The doctor here said I'll never see again. I've accepted my fate." But Oluchi refused to accept that. "You're going, Chica. You'll go and try again. Even if there's just 1% chance, you must take it. Please." He hesitated, but something about her voice, her confidence, her belief in him, gave him courage. "All right," he said finally. "If it will make you happy, I'll go." That night, when Oluchi got home, she smiled for the first time in a long while. Somewhere deep down, she knew this journey was going to change everything. In the city, Amarachi's fairy tale began to crumble. Ibuka, after taking her around for weeks, began to show his true colors. His calls became fewer, his texts shorter. When she asked when he would come to meet her family, he laughed. "You women in marriage. Can't we just enjoy what we have?" Her heart sank. "But you said." He cut her off. Please, don't stress me. I'm not ready for all that. Days later, she went to his apartment, only to find another woman wearing his shirt and cooking in his kitchen. When she confronted him, he didn't even pretend to care. You thought I was going to marry you? Amarachi, a beg no vex. You're a sweet girl, but I'm not into all that serious stuff. He slammed the door, leaving her standing there with tears rolling down her cheeks. The pain of betrayal burned deeper than fire. It was then she remembered the man she once left, the man who would have given his life for her. A month later, Chica returned from abroad. The villagers gathered as a car stopped in front of his house. When the door opened, the man who stepped out wasn't the same broken man who had left. His eyes were open, clear and bright. He could see again. The crowd shouted in joy. Oluchi stood by the gate, trembling as he walked toward her. He stopped in front of her, smiling through tears. Oluchi, I can see you now. Her eyes widened, tears spilling. Chica, he took her hands. You were my eyes when I couldn't see. Now I can see, and I see you clearly. The woman who never gave up on me. The crowd cheered as he knelt down right there in the compound, holding a small box. Oluchi, will you marry me? She covered her mouth, sobbing. Yes, Chica. 1,000 times yes. When Amarachi heard the news, she rushed back to the village. But it was too late. The man she left in darkness had found light again, and found love, too. She stood from afar, watching them laugh, surrounded by people. Her heart felt like glass shattering in silence. For the first time, she realized that blindness wasn't always in the eyes. Sometimes, it was in the heart. And as the wind blew softly through the mango trees, the villagers whispered, "True love never dies. It only finds a new way to see." The morning sun rose over Yumyuk with unusual brilliance, scattering gold and silver across the misty farmlands. The roosters crowed endlessly as women began their daily chores, sweeping compounds and boiling water for pap. The village, which had once murmured with pity for Chica the blind man, now buzzed with excitement and joy. The boy who once stumbled in the dark could now see again, and his story had spread like wildfire beyond the hills of Yumyuk. Children sang his name on their way to the stream. Chica o, Uni and a Fugala. The blind man sees again. Old men nodded with admiration whenever they saw him walking confidently down the road, greeting people with that familiar calm smile. Indeed, God still works miracles, they said. But beyond the miracle of sight was another, quieter miracle, the rebirth of love. Oluchi and Chica's love story had become the new talk of the town. People whispered about it at night, but this time, it wasn't gossip laced with malice. It was the kind that made hearts soften and women sigh in admiration. When Chica regained his sight, the first thing he did wasn't to celebrate or boast. He spent his first few days quietly, waking up early to sit outside and simply look at the world again. The trees he used to see, through Oluchi's voice, now stretched proudly before him. The birds he once imagined as colorful dots of sound now fluttered across the sky. The faces he had only known through memory were now vivid again. But nothing captivated him as much as Oluchi herself. He couldn't stop staring at her whenever she came around. The shape of her smile, the kindness in her eyes, and the gentleness in her movements. All of it made his heart race in ways it never had before. She was not the most beautiful woman in Yumyuk, but her heart made her radiant. One evening, as the two of them sat under the mango tree, the same tree where he once promised Amarachi a future, he turned to Oluchi and said, "Do you know something? You made me see again long before my eyes were opened." She looked at him, puzzled. "What do you mean?" "You made me see love differently. You made me see strength, patience, and faith. You saw the man inside me when the world only saw blindness. And now that I can see again, I see you everywhere." Oluchi blushed deeply, turning her face away, but her heart danced wildly. She had loved him quietly for months, never expecting anything in return. Hearing those words broke through all the walls she had built inside her. From that evening, their bond became unshakable. He visited her house every morning, bringing small gifts, sometimes bread from the city, sometimes just flowers he picked himself. Her mother, Mama Oluchi, smiled each time she saw them together. "Chica, God bless you. I thought blindness had taken everything from you. But look at how love brought you back." But while their love blossomed, far away in the neighboring town, Amarachi lived in silent torment. Her once bright eyes had lost their shine. She no longer went out, no longer laughed the way she used to. The betrayal by Ibuka had cut deep. After he dumped her, she realized she had traded gold for dust. She heard the news of Chika's recovery a week later, from a woman at the market who said, "You've heard, haven't you? That blind man, Amarachi's old lover, can see again, and he's marrying her best friend." That sentence felt like a slap. Her hands trembled so much that the tomatoes she was holding slipped and rolled into the mud. She didn't believe it at first. "No, Oluchi, it can't be." But when she called Oluchi's phone, it went unanswered. Later, through mutual friends, she confirmed it was true. Her heart broke all over again, not just from jealousy, but from shame. The man she had left because he couldn't see had found joy and love, while she, who had eyes, had walked into blindness of her own making. Days turned to weeks, and she couldn't stop thinking about him. Sometimes she dreamed of him standing before her, smiling and saying, "Amara, you should have stayed." Her mother noticed her mood and tried to console her. "My daughter, you made a mistake. Yes, but life doesn't end there. Learn from it and move on." But Amarachi couldn't move on. Regret had rooted itself in her soul. She began to visit the church more often, kneeling before the altar and weeping quietly. "God, forgive me," she prayed one night, tears soaking her hands. "I abandoned him when he needed me most. Please help me find peace." Chika's engagement to Oluchi became the biggest event Yumyuk had seen in years. It was held at Oluchi's family compound, decorated with palm fronds and colorful wrappers. The scent of fried meat, jollof rice, and palm wine filled the air. Drummers from the next village came to play, their talking drums echoing joy across the hills. Chika stood tall in a white senator outfit, looking like a prince from an Igbo folktale. Oluchi, dressed in a red and gold lace wrapper with coral beads around her neck, looked breathtaking. The villagers couldn't stop praising her. "Huh, Oluchi is blessed," an old woman said. "See how she stood by him through the storm. That's what true love looks like." Even Chika's parents were overwhelmed with gratitude. His mother hugged Oluchi several times, tears streaming down her face. "You brought my son back to life. God will bless your home, NWAM." During the ceremony, as Chika stood to speak, silence fell across the compound. "I lost my sight," he began, his voice steady and deep. "And I thought I had lost everything, my dreams, my happiness, even love. But God sent me another pair of eyes, not in my head, but in a heart that refused to give up on me. That heart belongs to Oluchi. She became my sight when darkness swallowed me. Today, I don't just thank her for loving me. I thank her for teaching me what love truly means." The crowd clapped and cheered, some even wiping tears. Oluchi stood beside him, her eyes glistening. She didn't need to speak. Her smile said everything. As the drums began to beat again, Chika took her hand, and together they danced, their steps light and full of joy. The villagers joined in, singing praises, their voices carrying far into the evening. But somewhere at the edge of the crowd stood Amarachi, dressed simply, her scarf tied low over her face. She had come quietly, hiding behind the mango tree where she once sat with Chika. Her chest heaved as she watched him smile, his eyes alive again. She wanted to run to him, to beg for forgiveness, but her legs refused to move. Every drumbeat sounded like a reminder of what she had lost. When Oluchi leaned on his shoulder and laughed, Amarachi turned away, tears blurring her vision. She couldn't bear it anymore. She slipped away unnoticed, her heart heavy but strangely lighter than before. She finally understood. Love is not about beauty or comfort. It's about presence, about choosing to stay even when it hurts. After the engagement, Chika and Oluchi's joy continued to grow. They began building their own home near the riverbank, a small but beautiful bungalow with a wide veranda. People said their marriage would be blessed beyond measure. But just when everything seemed perfect, a new challenge appeared. One night, Chika began to complain of sharp pains in his eyes. At first, they thought it was stress, but when it continued, fear gripped Oluchi. She stayed up all night praying, holding his hands and whispering, "Nothing will happen again, my love. God who opened your eyes will not let darkness return." By morning, Chika could barely keep his eyes open. Oluchi quickly took him to the city hospital, trembling all through the journey. After several tests, the doctor called them in. The nerves are weak, he said gently. If he strains himself too much, he might lose his sight again. He needs rest and no emotional stress. Oluchi nodded, tears gathering in her eyes. On their way home, Chica was quiet. Finally, he said, if I lose my sight again, will you still stay? She looked at him, shocked. Don't say that. I'll never leave you, Chica. I didn't love your eyes. I loved your soul. Even if you walk in darkness again, I'll be your light. He smiled faintly. Then I have nothing to fear. Her words wrapped around his heart like sunlight. Months later, their wedding day arrived. The church was filled beyond capacity. People from neighboring villages came to witness what they called the miracle love. The choir sang joyfully as Oluchi walked down the aisle, her white gown glowing like moonlight. When she reached Chica, he took her hands and whispered, I can still see you. Even if one day these eyes close again, I'll still see you with my heart. The priest smiled and said, this is love made perfect. They exchanged vows beneath the stained glass windows, and as they kissed, the congregation erupted in joy. Outside the church, Amarachi stood quietly at the gate, watching. This time, she didn't cry. She smiled softly, whispering to herself, he found his happiness. That's all that matters. Then she turned and walked away, ready to start her own healing journey. As Chica and Oluchi drove away in a decorated car, the villagers danced and sang behind them. The air was filled with laughter, drums, and blessings. And beneath the wide sky of Yumyuk, love, true love, stood tall once again, not in perfect sight, but in perfect vision of the heart. The wedding between Chica and Oluchi was the kind that Yumyuk village would talk about for generations. The drums had long gone quiet, yet the joy still lingered in the hearts of all who witnessed it. Even old Papa Nana, the village storyteller, swore that he hadn't seen such a pure love story since the days of his youth. Love has not died, oh, he would tell the young ones by the moonlight. It only hides until it finds hearts strong enough to carry it. When the newlyweds returned from their honeymoon in Owerri, the entire village gathered to welcome them. Children danced in circles, women ululated, and the men cheered as Chica helped Oluchi down from the car. She looked radiant, her smile wider than the river that curved behind their home. Chica, too, looked fulfilled, the kind of peace that only true love can bring glowed from his face. The house by the river, their new home, was finished and painted cream and gold. Flowers lined the path to the front door, and the wide veranda held 2 wooden chairs facing the setting sun. In the evenings, the couple would sit there, hand in hand, watching life move slowly around them. Sometimes, they would talk about their pasts. Other times, they would simply sit in silence, grateful for the gift of the present. Their marriage began beautifully. Oluchi ran a small tailoring shop by the market, while Chica, having regained confidence and stability, reopened his construction business. His clients returned, and soon his name spread again. Chica, the builder who lost his eyes and found them through love. He employed young men from the village, teaching them not only how to work, but how to live with integrity. Whenever people asked him how he managed to stay strong through everything, he would smile and say, because someone believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. At home, Oluchi became his pillar of joy. She made their home a place of laughter and prayer. Every morning, her soft singing would fill the air as she prepared breakfast. She still spoke to him the way she did when he was blind, describing things around them, painting the world with her words. Chica, see how the sunlight is dancing on the river today, she would say. And he would reply, it's not the sunlight that's dancing, it's your voice. They laughed a lot, prayed a lot, and dreamed together.